We're on, and good evening, every pony. Welcome to FanFiction Fridays on Oatstralia On Air Live. I'm Golden Microphone, your host for the night. Hey, I'm a host too, you know. And me! And Pegasus, and an announcer voice. Yay, we were mentioned in the opening. Okay, right. Not scripted, anyway. Now, tonight, unfortunately, we haven't had a chance to really sit down and get the theme song recorded or anything like that. And no, we're not doing another live singing. That was terrible last time. That was absolutely terrible. What we are going to do is we're going to get straight into it, and we're going to try and make up for last week's non-show by finishing Mug of Hard Cider. Okay, so for all of you listening at home right at this moment in time, I'm going to be posting the link into the chat now, and for those of you who are listening on YouTube later, the link will be down in the description below. Also, we are going to have one or two little surprises tonight, because none of you sent in stories, other than Pancakes, who sent us one a few minutes ago, but he sent us one anyway. We'll be reading that one a bit later, and then we'll be reading something I read an awfully long time ago, if Google Docs will stop this stupid error message. Okay. Let's see. Here we are. Right. I'm just going to start a little bit back from where we were last time so that we can get a gist of where we were. Celestia bucked, throwing her hooves out with all the strength she could muster. Her hooves connected with the tree and sunk deep into its side. The tree groaned, cracked, and began to bend under the princess's strength, like a small twig that was ready to snap. Before the tree itself could buckle, however, the roots gave way. From the frozen ground, the tree broke free, and, under the power of Celestia's hooves, it arced into the air. Twilight, Applejack, and Rainbow Dash all watched as the tree soared higher than the nearby trees and buildings. It then began to tumble back to earth, and with a resounding crash it fell into the street, a broken and splintered pile of its former self. Whoa! 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 Did you see that, Applejack? Rainbow Dash asked. She just bucked that entire tree! That was bad, Twilight finished. She galloped to the tree and looked up and down the streets. Lights were clicking on. Ponies had been woken up by the sound of the tree's destruction. Maybe we can put it back. Yeah. No pony has to know Princess Celestia uprooted a tree in a drunken stupor. Twilight began grabbing pieces of the tree with her magic. We can just put it back together and put it back in the ground. Yeah, just put it back and no pony will know. Twilight levitated every piece of the tree off the ground and quickly began putting branches back into place. Like a child that was about to be caught with the shattered fragments of a family vase, she was trying everything she could think of to fix it. She settled the trunk back into the ground and used every spell in her arsenal to try and mend it. There! Twilight proclaimed proudly a few seconds later, panting from the strain of her magic and the panic of the moment. Good as new! The tree stood tall and proud for all of 2 seconds before it fell apart into a splintered heap of branches at Twilight's hooves. It was a sight that made Twilight's face fall just as fast, and her frown only deepened when her ears swiveled to pick up the sound of opening doors. Ponies were coming, and they were about to be discovered. Twilight hopped anxiously on her hooves, trying to think of something, while Celestia, Applejack, and Rainbow Dash just sat back and watched. She circled the tree, then galloped back to where her friends and the princess were sitting. Okay, new plan, she told them with a firm stomp of her hoof. She then grabbed all 3 of them in her magic and shouted, Run! Just to stop there for a moment, Rowan Sudowoodo Todd asks, Sean Pancakes Woodfield, wait, you can listen to Oatstralia when you're capped? Well, I think Shane can answer. Sean can answer that for you.
Hello there. Well, it turns out I'm here too, just hanging back, not really doing much.
It's true, he's nothing.
Yes. Look forward to the fanfiction I suggested, Rowan.
Oh.
It's hilarious.
Oh dear, from the title it is rather hilarious. Now, back to the story. We are nearly finished. I swear to goodness gracious this time. We are nearly finished. Toppled tree leaves. Oh my goodness. That's terrible. It's a terrible pun, a written pun right here in front of my face. Give me a moment to try and actually get this right. And Sean's just read it. Isn't that right? Pancakes.
Yes, it is hilarious.
Toppled tree leaves townsfolk troubled. Yeah. I hope you're reading along because that was terrible. Last night, ponies of Ponyville were awoken and drawn from their beds by a cacophony outside their homes. They lit lanterns and braved the chill of the evening, only to find tragedy. In the cold of the snow, one of the oldest trees in Settlers Square had been left a splintered pile of its former self. Investigators on the scene have yet to determine the cause of the aged tree's untimely demise, but local residents all seem to have an idea of what uprooted the oak. One Granny Smith told reporters that "It was the timber wolves, don't you know? That's how they multiply. They tear down a tree that's ripe for the picking, and then carve it up into a patch of little timber wolf pups. Then them little pups grow up by eating wood chips and acorns and bark. Oh yes, them timber wolves sure do love bark." The first police pony on the scene, Blue 5, believes the old oak was taken down by less legendary creatures. "I'd bet my badge it was some local punks looking to cause trouble. Ponyville may look like a picturesque little town, but it has its dark side." Blue 5 paused at this before commenting. "That or Pink Pie did it." The only official information investigators have released thus far is that it looks like the tree was uprooted and then somehow moved to the neighboring street. It was after that. The sound of the kitchen door opening made Applejack look up from the paper. Beside her, on the table, sat a half-emptied cup of coffee next to a freshly brewed pot, the second pot of the morning. She had bags under her eyes from a less than restful night, and her mane was a mess. Still, she looked no worse than the mare that had just stumbled in the door. Princess Celestia removed one of the chairs from Twilight's kitchen table, transfigured it into a cushion, and then used it to sit down at the table. She rubbed her eyes with her fetlocks and looked through the window at the morning sun that was shining through. "Who raised the sun?" "Twilight said it was probably Princess Luna," Applejack answered before stifling a yawn. "And where is Twilight?" "She ran out when the paper got in," Applejack said. She pushed the paper across the table so Celestia could read the headline and see the accompanying picture. "Said something about gonna make sure no pony suspects us." Celestia groaned and rubbed her forehead to try and relieve her hangover-induced headache. "I guess that proves it. Last night got out of hoof." "Pardon my language, Princess, but what in the hay happened last night? I've never acted like that. It's like all my gosh darn common sense just up and left my head." Celestia flicked her horn weakly, using some magic to make one of the kitchen cupboards open. Contained within the cupboard were the coffee cups she sought, and, with a small grunt, she attempted to take one from the shelves. Her headache, however, was making her magic sputter and pop. The cup wobbled, swayed, and almost dropped to the floor. In the end, Celestia had set the coffee mug on the counter and then picked it up with her teeth. It was the only way to be sure the cup would arrive at the table in one piece. "That, Applejack, was the effects of the hard cider I had you brew," Celestia said as she took her seat at the table and filled her cup with coffee. "When you added yeast to your family cider, that yeast ate the sugar in your cider and made it into something called alcohol." From there, Celestia explained to Applejack the history of alcohol in Equestria. She told how alcohol had been a beverage brought over from the old country. She told of her own fall into seeking comfort in inebriation after she had banished Luna. She told Applejack about how that her name, Applejack, was also the name for a kind of distilled hard cider, an apple whiskey. "Named after whiskey, you say?" Applejack commented when Celestia finally finished, to which the princess nodded. "Yes, a whiskey that tended to have quite the kick, if I remember correctly." Applejack took a sip from her coffee mug, then laughed as she set it down. Well, my pa always did say I had a lot of buck in me. He joked I probably bruised my ma with all the kicking I did when I was still in her belly. Still, did you all intend for the three of us to get like that? What'd you call it? Drunk, Celestia answered. That's the word. Did you all intend for us to get that drunk? Celestia shook her head. No, I didn't intend for things to get that far. But perhaps that is for the best. Applejack, what would you say if I asked you to make hard cider again? What if I were to ask you to produce it so that any pony could have some, to help me reintroduce alcohol to Equestria? Honestly, Princess, I don't think I'd be comfortable doing that, Applejack admitted. Twilight was fuming about what happened when she left, and I have to agree with her. Don't get me wrong, I see where you're coming from. It's been a long time since I had a night like that where I just let go and did whatever I wanted. But, Applejack continued, we uprooted a tree, Princess, and things could have gotten a lot worse for the town, or us. I mean, what if Rainbow had done a sonic rain boom in the middle of town? What if I'd just tried to buck down some pony's house? What if you had raised the sun in the middle of the night? I'm sorry, but I just... Oh, wait, wrong pony. I'm sorry, but I just don't think my conscience would let me sleep if I knew something I was making ponies act that stupid and putting them in danger. Celestia sighed and looked into a cup of coffee. Don't apologize, Applejack. I appreciate your honesty, and I am sorry that I put you through everything that happened last night. Applejack waved a hoof and stood up from the table. It's all right. Doing it once was kind of fun. I just wouldn't want to do it again. Now, I best be getting back to the farm. Big Mac and Granny Smith must be worried sick about me. Applejack opened the kitchen door, only to come face to face with Rainbow Dash, who was looking just as ragged as the rest of them. There were bags under her eyes, and her mane seemed to lack some of its usual luster. She stepped through the door, yawned, and plopped down at the table without even glancing at Applejack. Morning to you, too, Applejack teased Rainbow Dash before she looked back to Celestia. By the way, Princess, are you still going to be taking them barrels of cider, or should I pour them down the drain? No, Applejack, I'll take care of them, Celestia answered before taking another drink of her coffee. Applejack nodded before slipping out of the kitchen to go and explain to her family where she'd been all night. That left Celestia and Rainbow sitting at the table, Celestia sipping her coffee while Rainbow Dash continued to wake up. What did Applejack ask you? Something about the cider? Rainbow asked before yawning again. Applejack was asking if I wanted her to pour it down the drain. Why would she do that? Rainbow asked, a bit shocked. Celestia finished her cup and refilled it from the coffee pot. She didn't enjoy our escapades last night, and I don't believe she'll be making any more of that particular cider either. What? Why? Last night was fun! Celestia glanced at Rainbow out of the corner of her eye and arched an eyebrow. You enjoyed last night? Are you kidding? You bucked a tree straight out of the ground! Rainbow Dash cheered with as much vigor as she could muster. I never knew you were so awesome, and that hard cider was great. I mean, it tasted like cider, and it got you to loosen up. What's so bad about that? Celestia smiled around the edge of her coffee cup. She took a long drink from the fresh cup, and then she set it down before refocusing her gaze on Rainbow Dash. Rainbow Dash, perhaps you and I need a chance to get to know one another better. You listeners can't hear this or see this, but I am shaking my head. Ah. Princess Luna strode through the castle halls, the quick tempo of her hoofsteps echoing against the walls. The sun was late to rise, just as it had been a week earlier when Celestia had gotten drunk in Ponyville. Luna still hadn't pried the truth out from her sister as to where she had secured the alcohol. Celestia could be tight-lipped when it suited her. Still, none of the guard had reported seeing Celestia leave the castle, so Luna strode with purpose in the direction of Celestia's bedroom. Sister, Luna called when she reached the bedroom door. Sister, are you in there? There was no response, and Luna furrowed her brow. She pounded on the door with her hoof and, when no answer came, threw the doors open with a burst of magic and strode inside. She expected to find her sister gone, but instead she found the room occupied by not only one, but two mares. There was also a wooden barrel with a cork spout resting in a nearby stand, and the floor was littered with a half-dozen empty mugs. Celestia was sitting on the floor, while Rainbow was on the bed. The two ponies were facing each other, staring at each other with flat faces and water streaming from their eyes. There was also a noticeable scent of hard apple cider in the room. "Sister, what are you—" Luna tried to ask, only to be cut off. Rainbow Dash blinked, and that simple action caused Celestia to squeal with glee and throw her hooves into the air. "I am the staring contest iron pony!" Celestia slurred, while Rainbow Dash groaned and flopped down onto the royal bed in defeat. It was all a sight that made Luna sigh and shake her head. "Oh, sister." The end. Hey!
It took us 3 weeks.
In case you didn't hear that, Pancakes just said it only took us 3 weeks. Yep, it only took us 3 weeks to finish Mug of Hard Cider. One Mug of Hard Cider. It was written by Penstroke and is available on FanFiction.net. Available in the description below for you YouTubers, and I already gave it to you guys in the chats who are listening live. Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. So, with that done, we can finally move on to other stories. Now remember, all of you who are listening, either on the YouTubes or on the live stream, please go right ahead and send us more fiction, more stories, so that we have plenty of stuff to read for you guys. Right at this moment in time, we're going to take ourselves a short break with one of our newest artists that have come out onto the scene, and well, as far as I'm concerned, a rising star, someone who, well, rekindled a love for musicals, I do believe. This is Awkward Marina, who was featured on Monday's Mellow Mondays, which is available on YouTube right now if you want to have a look-see. Search for Oatstralia on air. Easiest thing ever. And this is Anthropology. Well, it's actually a song called Anthropology, Lyra's Song, based on the Anthropology fanfiction. No, I'm not reading it. I'm not. Because it's very long. But here's the song anyway. This is Awkward Marina with Anthropology on Australia on Air Live.
Human beings fascinate me, being just the way they are. Tell me, little pony, can you push a cart or drive a car? Lyre is my instrument, but humans strum their sweet guitar. It's a mystery. Anthropology, fingers, toes, and tiny noses, brownish hair and tannish skin. Would it be too much to ask to see the world they're living in? Everybody tells me that it's old and fake mythology. It's a mystery. Anthropology, aren't you bored of brushing your coat, styling your mane with your hooves? I don't mean to butt in or gloat, but ancient history proves humans don't have wings or magic. They don't need it, they don't care. All they've got's imagination, new inventions everywhere. Babies, children, teens, and elders, all alike have clothes to wear. It's so real to me. Anthropology, Albert Einstein, Cleopatra, William Shakespeare, Elton John, Michael Phelps, Barack Obama. Who's to say that they're all gone? Maybe humans like us too and dress like us at Comic-Con. It's so real to me. Anthropology, yeah, they've had a couple of fights. Nobody's perfect, you see. Still I say I'm born with the right to study whatever I please. powers. For a pair of new legs, grab your camera, come on, zoom in, 'cause your favorite mare's a human, me! That is who I'll be. Anthropology.
That was Awkward Marina with Anthropology, Lyra's song, based on the fanfiction available on FanFiction.net. Anthropology. Well, the same. Okay. Same title, same song. Great stuff. And she really is brilliant. Utterly brilliant. She's probably not going to hear this, so she's awesome. That's just all there is. She's going to be a new internet celebrity. Luke, watch out. Okay, so we now go on to the next fanfiction, which is called Jack/Off by one terrible writer. Really. I'm not even kidding. I'm just going to go right ahead and pop this into the chat so you can see that I'm not lying at all. There it is. Jack off. Not telling you what to do, but that's just... Anyway, this particular fic is rated mature, so if you are a small foal or a really big baby, do not, I repeat, do not listen to the next bit of it all. Looks like Prime Sonic has just made it to the show. Welcome. He says, "Morning all. Wonder what I missed while I was in the shower. You missed us finally finishing Mug of Hard Cider. Hooray!" You can listen to it later on the YouTubes. Or if you're listening to it on the YouTubes now, YouTubeception. What? Nothing. We are now about to read Jack/Off by one terrible writer. According to this, after her failure in the equestrian rodeo competition, Applejack finds herself working in Cherry Jubilee's House of Ill Repute to make enough money to send back to Ponyville. However, it all goes horribly wrong when she finds out that her next customer is Rainbow Dash. Oh boy. Oh boy. Pancakes, you're the one who sent this in to us.
Hey,
Who-
don't give people the wrong idea about me.
I was about to ask who you wanted to read it.
You.
Oh, golden microphone to read it? Okay, well, all right, let's do this. Did you want Pegasus to read it or announcer opponent? I asked you. Who should I summon?
Just read it as golden microphones.
Gold microphone's reading. Gold microphone's reading. I'm reading. Okay, this is going to be very interesting. Just clicking on the first chapter here. Chapter 1. Jack/Off. Money. That is what it always came down to. Money. The quiet rural atmosphere of Dodge Junction was a world away from the terrifying hustle and bustle of Canterlot. The events in the equestrian rodeo competition still sent pangs of shame through Applejack's heart. Every time she closed her eyes she could see a pony laughing at her, another looking at her in pity or disgust for her failure. She had let herself down, and without any of the promised prize money, she'd let Ponyville down. At least in this obscure western town no pony would ever know of her failure, and perhaps she could make good on her word. No pony would know, that is, except for Cherry Jubilee. She had met the charismatic, classy pony at the rodeo and instantly struck up a rapport. Cherry had seemed fascinated by Applejack. She had spent long nights at the bar listening to stories about life in Ponyville. She had cheered Applejack on in every contest, and at the end, when Applejack was at her lowest ebb, she made her an offer she couldn't refuse. Cherry Jubilee's place of business was the one bright spot in all of Dodge Junction. A huge, flamboyant palace of a dwelling, the outside covered with a dazzling array of feathers and lanterns and streamers. But this was nothing compared to the inside. The walls were black and red, tastefully festooned with objects d'art from every corner of Equestria. Upon entering, Applejack had noticed some sort of zebra sculpture, an array of strange masks, and even what she hoped was a ceremonial whip proudly mounted above the fireplace. Applejack may have been a country pony all her life, but she wasn't stupid. She knew what Cherry Jubilee did without even having to ask. She knew what she meant when she contemplated her bucking technique with a wink. Complimented. And even if she didn't know all that, the large sign reading, Cherry Jubilee's House of Ill Repute, proudly emblazoned above the entrance, gave the game away. Now, dear, Cheery smiled, and Applejack gave a nod. I know this is a bit scary, but hear me out. I don't think I need to tell you what goes on here, but every pony works here has a lot of safe fun, and it's easy to make money. Very easy. She gave another wink of her luscious eyelashes. Clients pay up to 100 bits a session, you know. Most of that goes to me for the upkeep, but you can easily make 200 bits a week. Something went dry in Applejack's throat. 200 bits? She had only intended to follow Cheery to dodge It is Cherry. It changes! Someone needed to...
Disregard spelling mistakes.
Disregard spelling mistakes. Indeed. She'd only intended to follow Cherry to Dodge Junction for a short while she cleared her head, but 200 bits? She could make more than enough to fix the town hall roof in a matter of weeks. In 2 months she could earn enough to buy a new barn for the Apple family. She could send Apple Bloom to college instead of enrolling her on a fake apple-bucking diploma on the farm like she'd planned. I don't know. It ain't... She found her voice returning as she stammered, her wide eyes darting about the room. She now realized it was a lavish reception area. Comfy couches dotted about with various doors leading down a long corridor. It was immaculate, a world away from the messy, if carefree life she had at Sweet Apple Acres. I can see you're unsure, Cherry smiled. Why don't you meet some of the girls? She then called down the corridor. Girls, I have someone for you to meet. If you're not busy, that is. She gave another cheeky wink to Applejack, and Applejack blushed. Soon, several ponies trotted down the corridor towards her, all of them as immaculate and resplendent as the decor, each of them smiling and curtsying at Applejack. A lime-green Pegasus was the first to speak. Hi, I'm Cream Pie, she chirped. I enjoy sticky fillings. A tall, bespectacled unicorn grinned at Applejack. I'm Happy Endings, and I'm good at giving clients happy endings. And I'm Vinegar Stroke, spoke up a rather excitable Earth Pony, and I'm really talented with my hooves. Pick me! Pick me! Cherry Jubilee just gave a tinkling laugh and shook her head. No, no, girls, Applejack isn't a client. She's thinking about working here. She turned to Applejack. We're one big, happy family here, Applejack, and I really think you'll fit in. You'll make lots of money for your family, and you'll have a great time doing it. Her eyes sparkled with a mischievous twinkle. Your performance at the rodeo was magnificent. Such stamina! 200 bits a week just for giving some ponies a good hard ride, if you know what I mean. What do you say? Applejack's mouth went dry again. 200 bits. It was so easy. And out here in Dodge Junction, miles from Ponyville, no pony she knew would ever have to know. Before her brain registered it, her mouth opened to reply. I agree. Applejack rolled back on her bed and stared up at the ceiling. She was still unsure whether she could go through with what she had to do, but the lure of 200 bits a week was so strong. Slowly she sunk back into the covers. Her bed was soft and downy, perhaps the nicest thing she'd ever have to sleep on, or do other things on. The room Cherry had given her was small but beautiful, with a cupboard at the far end containing a huge variety of costumes and other items. Shelves that dotted the room were filled with knickknacks that she barely recognized, and a large full-length mirror dominated the far side. Cherry had explained that this was the only room available at the moment, but if she did a good job, she could work her way up to more luxurious accommodation. To Applejack, though, this was already the height of decadent luxury. She furrowed her brow. She could do this. She could. She had to, for Ponyville's sake. Just lie back and think of Ponyville. There were voices in the corridor outside. Nervously, she looked at the clock. The hand had just passed 6. Hours of business had begun. She started to feel herself sweat, her heart pounding as she took a deep breath. She tried to rationalize this. She knew plenty of ponies in Ponyville who put themselves about, and for no financial recompense. In some ways, wasn't this the best of both worlds, being paid for something that was enjoyable? The sound she was dreading came. A polite knock at the door. Cherry's head peeping in. "Applejack, your first client's here." She smiled sweetly, opening the door to welcome a rather nervous-looking stallion. "Enjoy yourselves." Applejack tried to lounge back on the bed seductively, but she soon realized her twisting made her look like she had bedbugs, so she stopped and looked at the newcomer over. He wasn't much to look at, not the sort of strapping stallion that turned her head in Ponyville. No, it was a gangly purple unicorn with a matted, scruffy brown mane, and a pair of oversized spectacles balanced precariously on his nose. There was also an attempt at some sort of tufty beard. Applejack made a mental note to avoid looking at that. The pony coughed nervously, his eyes wandering about the room everywhere but at Applejack. "Hi," he stammered out. "My name's Crown Gear, and I paid for an hour, and maybe we could..." He gave another gulp and looked at a nearby shelf. "Ludo?" he offered. Applejack gave a huge sigh. She thought her first time as a paid pony of leisure would be traumatic, but she had imagined that the trauma would be hers. She patted the mattress with her hoof. "Come here," she barked out. "No need to be all shy." The quivering wreck of a pony nodded quickly, clumsily pulling down a Ludo box from the nearby shelf. It split open, scattering the playing pieces everywhere. Oh dear," he yelped, sitting down on the bed hard. I thought we could first play Ludo, and then maybe..." With a shake of her head, Applejack grimaced. "Don't make it more painful than it has to be. I know what you want." She scooted over to the pony, placing her hoof around his shoulders and slowly lowering him onto his back. It felt good to be in control. "You just let Auntie Applejack take good care of you." Crown Gear gave a whimper and froze up like a rabbit in the headlamps of a runaway cart, covering up his belly with his hooves as Applejack loomed over him. "Oh, for Pete's sake," she muttered, slowly coaxing his legs apart. "Come on, I won't hurt you." Her bravado was slowed as she saw his member poking from between his legs, sharply bringing her back to the reality of what she was doing. It's just like Bob and Apples," she said to herself, as she paused over it, her breathing ragged now, before popping her head over the flaccid organ and sucking. "Oh, come on! I wanted to see this! I wanted to tell the story! Shut up, Pegasus!" "You perverted little..." "Hey, I hear that!" It was nothing she hadn't done before, but somehow different with a stranger. "Come on! Just let me read the next little bit, please." Slowly her tongue curled around the appendage, and she coaxed it to its full length in her mouth, one hoof running over the pony's balls, the other holding her hat on as she moved up and down. Finally, she popped her mouth off triumphantly to see it saluting her like a fresh carrot. A fresh, tiny, baby carrot. Crown Gear's head was lolling to one side, his eyes wide and goggling, a small amount of drool escaping from his mouth onto her clean sheets. He looked up to her nervously. It's not too..." "No," Applejack lied. "It's perfectly average." Seeing that the pony wasn't going to help her in any way, she hefted her weight over her new lover and slowly sunk herself down, feeling the slight twinge as his member penetrated her. "And now," she winked down at the pale pony, "now I'm gonna ride you. Hard." 1.5 minutes later, Crown Gear was panting for his life on the bed, while Applejack sat up, tidying her hair a bit. "Now that was fun, wasn't it?" She smiled triumphantly down at him, looking at the clock. "You didn't want more, did you?" Crown Gear just shook his head, trying to sit up, but falling back down again in a state of disorientation. "No," he croaked. Applejack shrugged at the exhausted pony. "Ah, well, and you still have 55 minutes left," she shrugged, looking at the clock. "I guess we'd better play Ludo after all." Inwardly, she congratulated herself at her cleverness. This was going to be a piece of cake. I am wondering why I'm reading this.
You'll see when you get to the end.
I'll see when I get to the end.
If you get to the end.
If I get to the end. There is plenty of time before the end comes along. Do all of you ponies enjoy hearing me, Gold Microphone, suffer?
I do.
Pancakes does.
You'll see it pop up in the comments in just a moment.
Ah. Okay, here we go then. Applejack was on top of the world. The previous night she had seen 4 ponies, and each of them had gone away barely able to walk in a straight line. Not only had Cherry Jubilee told her that they were the happiest customers she'd ever seen, but by bucking their brains out, she worked out that she only had to sell her body for 15 minutes that entire evening. The rest of the time was spent playing board games or making jigsaws with the dazed ponies. She almost felt guilty how easy it was. Almost. The other ponies in the building seemed nice enough, but Applejack had tried to avoid talking to them as much as possible. After all, she was only doing this to get money for her family and friends. She didn't want to have to associate with ponies who did this job out of choice. Instead, she spent the next day wandering about the slowly sleepy town and taking in the sights. There weren't that many of them. Soon 6 o'clock came round again, and Applejack found herself waiting in her room, feeling strangely excited for the evening that was to follow. "You sly pony," she winked at the reflection in the mirror, admiring her physique that had lain waste to so many ponies the night before. It was practically cheating. A knock came at the door again, and Cherry's head poked round. This time she was alone, but was carrying a bundle of clothing in her hooves. "Ah, Applejack," she chirped. "I've got someone for you who wants you to, dress up. I trust that's not a problem?" "No, ma'am," Applejack promptly replied, taking the bundle gratefully. "I'm always up for a challenge." As Cherry closed the door, Applejack unfurled the material curiously. It was some sort of spandex, stretching slightly when she tugged at it. Grunting and struggling, she squeezed all 4 hooves into the material, then slipped the hood over her head. Twisting and turning to make herself comfortable, she wandered over to the mirror to see what she was dressed as. "Ha! Well, I'll be!" she exclaimed. She was clad in a tight blue uniform, with a familiar lightning bolt logo emblazoned on the sides. Her mane poofed out from a hole cut in the top, and she struggled to make it look slightly more presentable. Her green eyes peered out from a hole in the material, and then alighted on a pair of goggles that Cherry had left lying on the floor. She put them on. She was unmistakably a Wonderbolt. Not quite, though. There was an obvious slit on either side of the costume for wings. She considered this for a moment, and looked into the wardrobe. Sure enough, there was a discarded pair of novelty wings lying in the back of the box stored there. They were yellow, but she was sure they would do. Putting them on, she looked back at herself in the mirror, and couldn't resist striking a pose. "Boy, howdy!" she exclaimed. "I never thought I'd be wearing one of these. I wonder what crazy stallion I'm gonna meet. Applejack the Wonderbolt! If only Rainbow Dash could see me now!" She froze in horror as she heard a familiar voice from the other side of the door. "This is going to be awesome!" it squeaked. "10 minutes ago, Rainbow Dash sat opposite Cherry Jubilee outside the hallway, twiddling her hooves as she looked awkwardly about the luxurious waiting room. "Thank you, Miss Dash." Cherry paused, writing a note in the logbook she had opened in front of her. "I'm sure there are many ponies who can meet your needs, and dressing up is all part of the service. Don't worry about that." Rainbow Dash wiped her forehead. "Phew! I thought you'd think I was weird. Now I'm sure you only have mares here, and that's fine. I'm sure I'll cope." She was cut off by Cherry. No, there's a strapping young stallion who's free, and a Pegasus, too." Rainbow Dash looked slightly shifty. I mean that I know stallions cost more, and I don't have that many bits to my name, so..." She pushed a pile of bits towards Cherry Jubilee. "Give me your lowest priced mare, for an hour. Cheapest you've got." Applejack stood motionless in shock as the door closed and Rainbow Dash bounced into the room, her face agoggle in delight at Applejack's appearance. "Oh my gosh!" she squealed excitedly. "I can't believe I'm doing this!" Panic welled up in the pit of Applejack's stomach. Rainbow Dash obviously hadn't recognized her in her body-encompassing Wonderbolt costume, but surely it wouldn't take long for a friend to realize who it was, and then her reputation would be ruined. The reality of where she was and what she was doing hit home like a brick wall, and she giddily staggered to the bed and sat down. So, Rainbow Dash," she said in a deep voice, hoping against desperate hope that she could disguise her speech. "What would you like to do?" "Well, you're Spitfire and Rainbow Dash trailed off, suspiciously peering into Applejack's goggles. "I didn't tell you my name. How do you know it?" "Oh, well..." Applejack's mind raced to find a suitable answer. "Well, of course, you're Rainbow Dash, the young flyer of the year, the most famous pony out of Ponyville." Rainbow Dash just beamed, puffing out her chest. "Well, I am rather famous, aren't I?" she boasted modestly. "I can do a sonic rainboom, you know, any time I want. I just don't feel like it right now." Her eyes flashed with excitement as she looked about the room. "Right, you stand there and tell me how wonderful I am and how you are letting me join the Wonderbolts." She shifted slightly, waiting to take in the praise, and then her eyebrow twitched again. "Wait a minute. Spitfire doesn't wear a Stetson hat." "Oh, oh, really?" Applejack coughed loudly, quickly whipping her hat off. "Sorry, Miss Dash. For some reason, I thought she did." Deciding she needed to quickly regain the initiative, she pulled Rainbow Dash forwards to sit on the corner of the bed. "Now you just sit here and let me tell you about how you're the best flyer in Equestria." "Oh, yes, Spitfire, yes!" Rainbow Dash squealed as she sat on the edge of the bed, bouncing up and down like a small filly on Heart's-Warming Eve. She turned her head to look dreamily into Applejack's goggles. "Tell me." "Well," Applejack stammered, "I guess I saw you flying and flapped your wings real nice, so I guess you can join the Wonderbolts." "Yes, yes, yes!" Rainbow Dash punched her hoof into the air. "This is brilliant!" Applejack died a bit inside. The clock was ticking painfully slowly, each movement of the second hand seeming to last an eternity. If Dash thought for one moment that it was Applejack in the Wonderbolt costume, her life would be over, finished. There was just one option. She had to make sure Dash was suitably exhausted enough not to notice that it was her friend providing the services. Applejack was a traditional Earth pony from a traditional family. She wasn't particularly into mares, though she didn't begrudge those that were. It just wasn't something that had ever interested her. Rainbow Dash hadn't particularly interested her either. She was a good friend, but that was all. The idea of having to make love to her filled her with a cold, hard dread. But she knew that the future of Ponyville depended on her keeping this job. Her reputation depended on her being undiscovered. In short, she had no choice. Slowly, she wrapped one hoof around Rainbow Dash's shoulders and drew her in closer. Rainbow Dash seemed giddy with excitement, pumping her hooves up and down as Applejack drew her closer. "In fact," Applejack whispered into Rainbow Dash's ear, "I think you should take me on a ride." "Anything you say, Spitfire," Rainbow Dash croaked out, looking up at the ceiling. "I guess we can fly around the ceiling and—" Her eyes went wide as Applejack traced her tongue over her left-hand wing. "Such a strong wing," Applejack murmured as sultrily as she could manage, licking up and down the shape of each feather. "I'd like to see them all stiff and to attention." With a squeak from Rainbow Dash, she felt the blue pony's wings stretch out. One hoof started to run over them, and the other was placed squarely on Rainbow Dash's chest, pushing her firmly onto the bed. "You know, Pancakes, you really, really could have done better for readers. This guy just makes it sound like a classy novel. I could have made it sound so sultry." "Would you just sit down and shut up, Pegasus?" "I've had to do this for 2 weeks, waiting for my turn. I have a right to complain." "Just because you're on the payroll doesn't mean you can complain." "What Hey! I don't even have enough to go to this house of ill repute, for goodness sake. You go to houses of ill repute? I said nothing. Excuse me, I have a hoofer cure to go for. I have a hoofer cure I need to go for. Right. Back to the story. Sorry all of you YouTubers who are confused by this. Pegasus is a bit of a drama queen. I am not. I I can't show you how good a flyer I am from here. Rainbow Dash uttered as Applejack loomed over her, straddling her firmly and grinding softly against her pelvis. You can show me how good you are, though. Applejack slowly lowered her body onto Rainbow Dash's, pinning her friend down as she slowly and gently dry-humped her. After all, she nibbled at Rainbow Dash's neck, you are the best young flyer in all Equestria. I might have to make you my... Vice Captain? Rainbow Dash gasped out, her wings flapping feebly on the bed cover with every administration of Applejack's mouth. Yeah, sure. Or maybe... Applejack ran a hoof down Rainbow Dash's side, rubbing her cloth-covered cheek against Dash's, her mouth whispering into her ear. Maybe you can be my captain. Oh, Spitfire! Rainbow Dash was quivering now, biting her bottom lip hard. Oh, touch my cutie mark.
Man, hearing you read this is the most amusing thing ever.
You are possibly the worst pony I've ever met.
Guilty.
Applejack raised an eyebrow and gently stroked the symbol on Rainbow Dash's flank. Rainbow Dash gave a little moan, and taking the hint, Applejack started to kiss down Rainbow Dash's chest slowly. She made her way to her right-hand flank, licking and kissing the cutie mark. Dash's voice racing higher and higher in a warbling moan. Please don't make me read this. Because you know I have to. I have to.
You have to. Almost over.
Live readings. Don't you just love them? YouTube.
It's almost over, then you'll get the punchline.
Okay. Okay. Tell me you'll make it the new Wonderbolt logo. Rainbow Dash cried. Oh, my face! That can be the new logo, and... Her cries were thankfully cut off as Applejack bit the bullet and dove her face between Rainbow Dash's legs, lapping away. Rainbow Dash started to twitch uncontrollably, going into almost immediate spasms at the merest touch of Applejack's tongue. Oh, Spitfire! She squeaked. I've always dreamed of this. I saved myself for you, Spitfire. I'm your little Dashy. Call me Dashy. We can fly together every night and live in my cloud house. And oh, Spitfire! Applejack...
I'm a bad person and I feel bad.
Applejack rolled her eyes at Rainbow Dash's rather pathetic display, being even more glad at that moment for the mask that covered her expression. Determined to get the deed over and done with, she started to lick deeper, feeling Dash's thick scent permeate her tongue, almost overwhelming her with how wet her friend had become so quickly. I have a little plushie of you that I sleep with at night, Rainbow Dash wailed. And sometimes I squeeze it between my... Thankfully, the next mind-shattering revelation was cut off as she gave an orgasmic wail, grinding her hips hard into Applejack's face as she came, her limbs flailing about wildly in an intense spasmodic explosion. Finally, she rolled over panting, tears streaming down her face as she collapsed into Applejack's hooves. Thank you, Spitfire, she wept. Thank you. Applejack's eye twitched. She had never felt the need to scrub herself clean as strongly as she did now. There, Dashy, she managed, bustling Rainbow Dash to the door. The clock still showed 10 minutes to go, but she was sure in her current state Dash wouldn't notice. Come again. She pushed Rainbow Dash out of the door, the blue pony topping straight into the hallway to land on the floor with a hard thud. Slamming the door shut, she locked it and leant against it hard, trying to spit the taste of Rainbow Dash out of her mouth. Ah, she muttered. That was horrible. Who'd have thought Dash would be all the way out here? She slowly sunk to the floor, closing her eyes for a blissful rest, hoping to drive the images of Rainbow Dash's twitching body from her mind. They flew open again at the sound of more voices outside. It really is kind of you to accommodate the Ponyville annual Crouch trip, Miss Jubilee. You have excellent facilities here. Do you mind if my dragon comes in with me to watch? Applejack's hoof flew to her mouth. It was twilight, and all of Ponyville by the sounds of it. She started to think. She could leave the door locked, pretend she was ill. She could find an excuse to leave the Wonderbolt costume on. She heard Cherry's voice echo from the corridor. That will be extra, Miss Sparkle. Oh yes, I see. Well, we have a new mare who's just started with us. She's cheap and will accommodate your needs, but you'll have to wait your turn. This stallion is next in line. Yup. Applejack leapt to her hooves and almost shot across the room in wide-eyed shock. It was the unmistakable voice of her brother. She couldn't. She shouldn't. Either way, she was doomed. There was a knocking at the door. The voice of Cherry asking her to open up for a lovely young stallion. The end of her reputation. Gulping down heavy breaths, Applejack came to a decision. She flung open the door and pushed herself out into the hallway, still clad head to toe in the Wonderbolt costume, which was now looking rather worse for wear. Cherry looked slightly annoyed at this display, but this was nothing to how Applejack felt. In the waiting room there was not only Twilight, not only Big Mac, not only an exhausted-looking Rainbow Dash, but what looked like half of Ponyville, all waiting patiently. Pinkie Pie, Bon Bon, even little Scootaloo, who was clutching a rainbow-coloured wig in her mouth. Applejack took in the scene, her jaw slack as she turned from Cherry to the townsfolk in front of her. Just what is wrong with you all? She wailed in despair at the crowd. I can't do it. I tried. I couldn't win the money at the rodeo, so I thought I'd come here and sell my body for bits, and I thought no pony would know, but now every pony'll know, 'cause I can't do it. I can't keep having sex with every pony who wants me. She tore off the mask to reveal her rather flustered face. A gasp went up across the room with a shocked chorus of Applejack! Rainbow Dash looked up. Applejack, how long have you been Spitfire? She gaped. Applejack sighed shamefacedly, turning from her friends to Cherry Jubilee. I'm sorry, Miss Jubilee, she said slowly. I really thought I could just sell myself, but I couldn't. Cherry Jubilee just stood staring at Applejack. An uncomfortable silence descended as no one in the room seemed to want to speak. Finally, she replied. What? She uttered simply, her voice betraying a slight angry tremble. Some of the other doors in the corridor had opened, and the other workers had popped their heads out to see what the commotion was. Applejack tugged at the collar of her costume. I ain't cut out for working in no brothel. I'm sorry. You've been so good to me. Applejack. Cherry's reply was short and curt, her speech quavering slightly as she twitched. Applejack, this isn't a brothel. I make confectionery and cream cakes, Cream Pie cried from her room, waving a half-full icing dispenser out the door. I help ponies come up with endings for their stories, Happy Endings said, her hooves full of manuscripts. And I do pottery, Vinegar Strokes chirped from her doorway. And cookery, I multitask. Cherry Jubilee narrowed her eyes at Applejack. Applejack, have you been bringing my house of ill repute into ill repute? But... Applejack's voice quivered, and she looked around the room at the shocked faces of all ponies present, and then down at her own Wonderbolt costume, which smelt of Rainbow Dash. But you said you wanted me to give ponies a good hard ride. Pony rides! Pony rides, not sex! Cherry Jubilee looked like she was having a stroke. You let them sit on you, and you trot up and down, and it's all lovely fun. That's what we do here. We entertain, play games, have fun, not this? Oh. Applejack looked down at the floor, mulling over the implications of what Cherry had just said. Then she looked up. Oh, well, that sounds easy. Can I? No. Oh. Applejack sucked in her cheeks, feeling the harsh glares from Cherry, her family, and friends. Well, this is awkward. The silence stretched on for what seemed like forever. It was Rainbow Dash who broke the tension, trotting over to Applejack. Applejack breathed in, waiting for the tirade of insults to begin, but it never came. Instead, she stood in front of her, almost protectively. Look, Every Pony, Rainbow Dash began, looking between her shocked friends and Cherry Jubilee. Applejack's not a bad pony. She's just a pony who made a few mistakes. She didn't mean to do anything wrong. She just wanted to help her friends. So don't judge her, Every Pony. And please, Cherry Jubilee, think twice before firing her. She gave a small cough. I've still got 10 minutes left on my account. The end.
That's pretty funny.
That was a funny plot twist. That was
a pretty good plot twist.
that was good. That was good. I'll admit that. You sent me Clop.
It's not like it's the first time you've read. Remember Trixie's Funhouse?
I remember Trixie's Funhouse. No one should remember Trixie's Funhouse. And that was...
Trixie's Funhouse. Do not speak of Trixie's Funhouse.
That was not Clop. That was horror. As far as I'm concerned. That was cupcakes with a bit of sex.
You know what you should read now?
No.
Rainbow Dash Seduces a Watermelon.
I'm not reading Rainbow Dash Seduces a Watermelon. I've already done that.
It's funny.
I'm not...
Friggin' Rowan. You'll see it.
Rowan.
When you see his comment, because it loads slower for you.
Yes, it does load slower for me, but... Oh, for the love... And I'm reading these comments, YouTubers, because...
He didn't see it coming.
You know what? I'm not even going to read those. YouTubers, be thankful that you're not reading any of this. Why? Why even? No, Rowan, I'm not reading Trixie's Funhouse again. No. Maybe, but no. No. Definitely, no, certainly not. You know what? I need to scrub myself clean here, so I'm going to give you guys 3 pieces of music to listen to. Funnily enough, it's actually part of a new release that YourEnigma has given us. Tavi and Scratch, Relationship in 4 Movements. You'll be listening to some fantastically beautiful music that you'd probably normally hear on Mellow Mondays, but we're playing it tonight. No, Rowan. Pancakes, do not yell out these comments. Good pony. Good stallion. Now, you're going to be listening to 3 fantastic pieces of music that you'd normally hear on Mellow Mondays, but I really need to clean up after this. Mess. I didn't enjoy it. I did. That's what I have to clean up. Pegasus! There we go. And so we're breaking off for a break. This is Tavi and Scratch, a relationship in 4 movements, right here on FanFiction Fridays, Australia on air live. That was Tavi and Scratch, a relationship in 4 movements, and what a fantastic set from... Sorry about that. What a fantastic set from the master of the... the master of the classical piano and the new... new electronics. Experimentations aside, what we've got for you now is a fantastic story that I read much earlier this year, but it seems to be having some problems. Maybe I can save this page and actually read it. No, I can't do that. Okay. I read this particular fiction much earlier in the year when I started getting into fan fictions. This was around the time I discovered Moonstone Cup as well. This particular one, though, well, let's just say that it's interesting. It is long, kind of like Moonstone Cup, but completely worth it as it goes along. Well written, and it's a great take on what we all know is pretty darn cool. This is My Little Avenger, and no, before you cry foul, it has nothing to do with the it has very little, if nothing, to do with the blockbuster hit that came out only a few months ago. Now, I'm going to put up the EQD link into the chat so that you can all have a look-see. Yep, and of course for you YouTubers at home, I'm going to put the EQD link up to you as well in the description below. Now, my little problem here is that, well, for some reason, Google Docs, which is what this whole story is written in, has a problem with me being alive. Not entirely sure what it is, but yeah, it's a little problem. So sometimes you're probably going to hear me swear a blue moon, but it's all for you. Okay, it looks like it's working now, so I should be able to read at least the first chapter for you. My Little Avenger, Chapter 1. Celestia's sun was just breaching the horizon as Macintosh Apple, more commonly known as Big Macintosh or Big Mac, current head of the Apple family and owner of Sweet Apple Acres, awoke from a peaceful night's sleep. The bright red earth pony gave a loud yawn as he heaved his enormous frame upright, the bed springs creaking beneath him. He'd had the bed made special by his friend in town, Featherdown, to accommodate his unusual size, but it still complained whenever he moved suddenly. Big Macintosh went about his usual morning routine. He went into the bathroom and splashed some water in his face to chase away the last of sleep. He brushed his teeth quickly and efficiently, his hooves gripping the toothbrush with a surety born of long practice. He re-entered his room and gave the mane of his Smarty Pants doll a quick brushing, a relatively new addition to his routine. He donned his usual horse collar and turned to leave the room, only to come face to face with his calendar. The calendar had a great many marks upon it in red ink, signifying days of importance to the running of the farm. The end of the applebuck season was always busy. This month the calendar was practically covered in ink. But today's date, right near the very bottom of the calendar, was different. Instead of the usual detailed note, it was bare but for the words, "The Day," written upon it and circled. It always managed to sneak up on him, Big Macintosh thought. What with the craziness of applebuck season, trying to harvest all of the many trees that grew on Sweet Apple Acres before the change of seasons, he always forgot the day. It might seem strange to other ponies that he'd forget such an important date, but those ponies had never tried running a farm. There was no work to be done today. Not for him. The last time he'd tried to help out on the day, Applejack had threatened to cut off his own tail and make him eat it. Big Macintosh had wisely chosen not to test her. He supposed he could go back to sleep if he wanted, but he was far too used to rising with the sun. He doubted he'd get any rest. So he left his room and headed downstairs to the kitchen. Even if Applejack wouldn't let him help on the farm, Celestia herself wouldn't be able to keep him from doing something, even if it was just cooking breakfast for his family. And yet, as he entered the kitchen, he found that even that simple chore had been taken from him. Granny Smith snoozed in a chair as piles of her signature apple pancakes cooled on the countertop. Big
What now?
apple pancakes. Apple my guest.
Apple pancake sounds like a shipping.
Oh, Lord. Apple pancake shipping? I ship.
It's now canon.
It's canon now. It's right here. Black and white on the screen. Everyone knows it now. Let's see. Big Macintosh had always had a weakness for his grandmother's pancakes. Clearly, the dear old mare had stayed up late last night, cooking his favorite treat. His slight disappointment in his inability to help was drowned out by a warm feeling of gratitude. Macintosh had just sat down at the table with a larger helping of the delicious sweet pancakes than was strictly necessary when a wild thumping on the stairs indicated the arrival of a certain hyperactive filly. Apple Bloom rarely woke this early, but today was the day. She wouldn't want to be late to greet her brother. Big Macintosh stepped away from his plate and braced himself just in time to meet a flying tackle hug from his youngest sister. "Happy birthday, big brother!" Apple Bloom chirped happily. Big Macintosh smiled as he carefully returned the tiny filly's hug. "Mornin', Bloom," he drawled, setting her down carefully. "Seems Granny Smith made us some pancakes. Want some?" "Do I?" Apple Bloom exclaimed, excitable as always. With a chuckle, Big Macintosh served his younger sister some pancakes as another, much calmer set of hoof steps on the stairs signaled the arrival of Big Mac's last remaining family member. "Happy birthday, Mac!" Applejack called out cheerfully, if a little sleepily, as she entered the kitchen. Applejack had always been a heavy sleeper, but she refused to let that stop her from waking on time. Big Macintosh worried about her sometimes, but ever since the spectacle of last year's applebuck season, she'd been taking better care of herself. "See you found the pancakes Granny Smith made for y'all?" She served herself some. "So, what's the plan?" Big Macintosh thought for a moment. Normally, when he had a rare day off, he liked to find a quiet corner to read. He was actually quite a fan of adventure novels, but opportunities to read were too few. As appealing an idea as the idea sounded to him, that just wouldn't do for today. You had to do something special for your birthday. Otherwise, it was just another day. "Think I'll go hiking," he said finally. "Haven't been up in them mountains in years." "The mountains?" Applejack looked distinctly uncomfortable. "I don't know, Mac. It can get mighty dangerous up there. The girls and I saw a hydra up there once. Well, ran from a hydra. Same thing. Not to mention there used to be a dragon up there. Who knows what could have moved in after it left?" Big Macintosh gave his sister a rare smile. "When did you become the reasonable one?" Seeing Applejack's annoyed face, he gave her a quick nuzzle. "Aw, don't you worry none, sis. I'll be fine. I can take care of myself." Applejack just sighed. "I know. I just worry, that's all. Y'all know we couldn't get by with that crash." Big Mac and Applejack both turned towards the counter to see Apple Bloom covered in pancakes. Kickity. Ah, we're all still feeling it after that last fanfic, aren't we? I think we are. Okay. Apparently she tried to reach the plate on the counter for second helpings, only to result in a broken plate and a new pancake coat. "Whoops," she said sheepishly. Applejack rolled her eyes. "You finish your breakfast and get ready for that hike of yours, Mac. I'll take care of this." "Yep," Big Macintosh replied, mildly relieved not to have to deal with the sticky filly. "You be careful now, you hear?" Applejack said as she helped secure Big Macintosh's saddlebags. "Yep, don't you worry. I'll be back before Pinky's birthday party." The large stallion promised, giving his sister an affectionate nuzzle. "You look after Apple Bloom and Granny Smith. Carrot Top will be by later to check up on you." "Check up on me?" Applejack cracked a smile. "Don't you trust me?" I'm a bit too old for a babysitter, Mac. It ain't you I'm worried about. Big Macintosh reassured her. Apple Bloom invited her friends over for lunch today. Unless you want to deal with them on your own. Applejack made a face. Never mind. Send all the babysitters you want. Macintosh gave a low chuckle. Thought so. Take care, sis. He gave her another nuzzle and headed out. Big Macintosh always loved the outdoors. The fresh air, the smell of nature. He counted himself lucky that his work required him to stay outside all day, rather than cooped up in a stuffy office somewhere. Still, farm work kept him so busy he rarely had time to stop and enjoy himself. As he hiked up the gently sloping mountain path, he kept his pace relaxed, stopping frequently to smell the flowers, or give a crumb of bread to a passing animal, or simply to admire the scenery. And what scenery! Even only halfway up the mountain, the view from up here was simply breathtaking. More than once, Macintosh found himself wishing he were an artist or a poet, so he could capture the natural beauty of the gently rolling hills and wide open plains of grass below him. Even a camera would do. Sadly, Macintosh had never been a very artistic pony, so he simply admired the scene and continued his upward climb. Celestia's sun was reaching its zenith now, and even the this one word always gets me, indefatigable, I'm not even sure. Ind- Big Mac was beginning to tire.
I don't even think that's a word, and I'm pretty good with my words.
Believe it or not, that is a word, and I'm just not very good with it. Later on, for you YouTubers and for the benefit of everyone, I'm going to look it up and put it into the description below so that you can all laugh at how badly I managed to screw this word up. He decided to stop and rest, leaning against the rocky wall of the mountain as he fished an apple out of his saddlebags. He munched it contentedly as he pulled out one of his favorite books, a fascinating book by a stallion named Coltine. The plot was slightly confusing, but it seemed to be about a magic ring and a fellowship of ponies that formed to safeguard it. Applejack's librarian friend Twilight had recommended it to him and let him keep it for an extra week since she knew how busy he was. He was just settling down to read when a loud growl filled the air. All at once, Big Macintosh was alert, hurriedly sweeping his borrowed book back into his saddlebag. A second growl sounded, and he hurriedly got to his hooves, just in time to see the source of the noise clambering up the path behind him. It was a creature he recognized from an incident about half a year ago, when that loudmouth show mare had come to town. A large bear, bigger than the barn back on Sweet Apple Acres, with skin seemingly made of stars and blue sky. An Ursa Minor. The monster was a bit smaller than the one that had attacked Ponyville, but it was still plenty large enough to crush even a pony of Big Macintosh's size under its paw. One thing that the small, rational part of his brain that wasn't panicking noticed was a strange symbol inscribed on the beast's forehead, but he had no time to regard it. Big Macintosh was a pony of incredible strength and stalwart courage, but when faced with this immense beast, the only recourse was to do something he was very much unaccustomed to: turn tail and run. Big Macintosh turned and galloped up the mountain path, hoping the Ursa wouldn't follow. It was just a baby, after all, he reasoned. Remembering what Twilight had said after banishing the beast from Ponyville. It was likely just grumpy and stomping around. It wasn't after him. He just needed to put some distance between him and it, and he could continue his leisurely hike. Right? Apparently not, as a loud roar and earth-shaking footsteps indicated the massive blue beast giving chase. The Big Mac's powerful legs pumped desperately, trying to escape, but as strong and fit the farm pony was, he was built for endurance, not speed. The Ursa behind him was not an especially fast beast, but its incredibly long pace meant it could chew up distance at an astonishing rate, gaining on the fleeing earth pony at an alarming rate. This wasn't working, Big Mac thought, searching desperately for some means of escape. Other than continuing to run desperately forward, his only options were to throw himself from the mountainside or to run towards the Ursa, hoping to dodge its legs and teeth and get past it. A glance behind him showed that option to be unfeasible. The mountain path was just large enough to accommodate the beast. He'd never squeeze past. Mac's chest began to burn with exertion as the Ursa Minor came closer and closer, its enormous jaws snapping at him viciously as they approached. Just as he began to despair of his survival and contemplate the bitter irony of dying on one's birthday, his salvation came into view. A cave set into the side of the mountain. It was a spacious opening, but far too small for the pursuing beast. With a burst of speed born of desperation, the exhausted earth pony cleared the last few feet to the cave and dove inside just ahead of the massive bear's snapping jaws. Sprawled on the ground and gasping desperately for air, Big Mac looked back to see if the Ursa would leave. Sadly, quite the opposite was true. The beast seemed determined to follow its quarry despite the physical impossibility, forcing its head and shoulders into the too small opening. It roared in frustration, its thrashing shaking the cave violently. Big Mac could feel the vibrations through his aching, exhausted hooves. If he kept this up, it could collapse the cave on them both. Horse apples, Big Mac swore quietly. He couldn't stay here, that was for sure. Already pebbles and small rocks were beginning to fall from the ceiling of the cave. Thankfully, a tunnel extended deeper into the mountain, away from the maddened beast. Forcing himself to his hooves, the exhausted stallion hurried down the tunnel as fast as his aching limbs could carry him. With any luck, the tunnel would come out somewhere else, so he could leave the mountain's innards without having to go past the insane Ursa. At first, Mac moved at the closest thing to a run his exhausted legs could manage, trying to escape the danger zone at the cave's mouth. Once he'd gone far enough so that he could no longer see the entrance, and the monster's roars and flailing were a distant rumble, however, he slowed to a sedate walk. He pulled a flashlight from his saddlebag, holding it in his mouth to illuminate the cave. Celestia bless Applejack. She'd insisted he be prepared for anything, and had packed him a flashlight in case he got lost and stayed out past sunset. He'd tried to tell her it wasn't necessary, that he knew the mountains well enough to find his way, but she'd insisted, and he was glad for it. The tunnel wound a short ways past the bend which blocked off light from the entrance, before opening up into a larger cavern. The cavern, sadly, had only one entrance. If he wanted to leave the cave, he'd have to go back the way he came, and he could still hear the distant sounds of the disgruntled Ursa, though it seemed less agitated for the moment. Trapped as he was for the time being, Macintosh decided to look around the cavern. Not that there was much to see. It was largely empty, save for a lump of rock in the very center of the room, shaped like a very roughly cut pedestal. Upon the pedestal rested what appeared to be a gnarled old wooden walking stick, just high enough for a pony to support his front hoof on as he walked. Mac approached the pedestal, regarding the stick curiously. The pedestal, he discovered, was not roughly carved per se, but only half finished. Its base was of beautiful, smooth craftsmanship, with runes of a language Macintosh did not recognize along its length. However, about a third of the way up the pedestal's length, the fine work abruptly gave way to bare rock, as though the crafter had given up part way through. Why had someone placed such a seemingly worthless stick here with such care, only to abandon it and leave its resting place incomplete? Big Macintosh wondered about this only briefly, as another, more practical thought came to his head. Using the staff as a lever, he might be able to pry some larger rocks loose from the tunnel walls. He could buck pretty hard when he had a mind to. He figured he could kick a few boulders at the Ursa with any luck. He might chase it off. His energy bolstered by his new plan. Big Mac took the staff from the pedestal and leaned his hoof against it, intending to use it for its intended purpose as a walking stick first. After all, he was still quite tired. The tip of the staff came down and banged against the ground with a resounding crash that the tiny impact didn't warrant. A bright light emitted from the cane's top, growing brighter and brighter until it enveloped him with a bright flash and a crash of thunder. Big Mac felt power surging through him like he'd never felt before. He dropped his flashlight to the ground as the power overtook him, wiping away his exhaustion. He hardly noticed the straps of his saddlebags bursting as he grew too large for them, his body warping as the electric power washed through him, changing him to suit itself. As abruptly as it had begun, suddenly the display of power stopped, and the mighty being who stood in the center of the cavern opened its eyes. Miles away in Ponyville, one pony was in the library, busily studying a history of sexuality in the Griffin tribes. Twilight found the subject endlessly engrossing and rather enlightening. It actually went some ways towards explaining the highly defensive behavior of Dash's friend, make that former friend, Gilda, during her trip to Ponyville. However, she was distracted from her studies as she suddenly detected a massive surge of energy, so powerful it almost felt like a physical blow to her horn. The shock of it knocked her to the floor, causing her to drop her book. Her book was swiftly forgotten, however. She called out to a faithful assistant. "Spike!" she called out. "Get my book on advanced spellcraft and magical phenomena. Then get some paper and quill. We need to send the princess a letter." Pinkie Pie merrily hummed her cupcake song as she withdrew a fresh batch of the titular treats from the oven. She took them to the counter to apply some icing, her mind wandering as it often did. At that moment, she was wondering what clouds were made of. They just felt wet and cold when she passed through them on her whirlicopter, but Rainbow Dash slept on them all the time and said they were comfy and warm. How could something be warm and dry and cold and wet all at the same time? Was it magic? Was there some kind of trick? Did Pegasus wings turn clouds warm somehow? Maybe it was like baking, turning a wet and sticky batter into delicious treats. Oh, maybe clouds were made of pastries! Suddenly, a powerful shudder ran up her spine as her pinky sense went into overdrive. Her entire body shook with the force of the sensation, her spine twisting like a pretzel before she spun around in a circle like a miniature pink tornado. Finally, she plopped down on the ground. The spinning left her dizzy. Pinky shook her head, trying to clear it. That was different. She hadn't felt a pinky sense like that since... "That's not good," she whispered. She looked at the cupcakes on the counter that had miraculously survived her seizure, but the colorful confections no longer appealed to her. She just wasn't hungry anymore. Princess Celestia was in a terribly boring meeting about the wages of weather ponies in Hoofington when she felt it. A wave of magic, stronger than anything any pony other than herself or her sister could manage. But this wasn't her sister's magic, that much she could tell. This magic was... new. The princess raised a hoof to stop the mayor of Hoofington. "I'm sorry, Parchment Paper, but I'm going to have to cut our meeting short. Something's just come up. Please, put any further concerns you have in writing and have them delivered to my secretary. I'll be sure to give them due consideration." She ignored the mayor's protests as she nearly bolted from the room. It took her less than a minute to arrive at Luna's room. The younger Alicorn was waiting for her with a grin on her face. "You felt it too, didn't you, dear?" she asked excitedly, looking for all the world like a filly on Christmas morning. "That was new!" "Oh, I felt it all right," Celestia assured her, feeling a smile of her own steal across her face. "I don't know where it came from, but..." She was interrupted as a scroll materialized in a flash of green flame before her. "Ah, sweet, dutiful Twilight. She must have felt it as well. Let's see what she's discovered." She levitated the scroll up and opened it. Deep in the Everfree forest, a blue unicorn looked up weakly from her bed of leaves and grass. What, in Equestria? Even deeper in the Everfree, where the trees grew so thick neither the sun's harsh gaze nor the playful light of the moon could penetrate, a powerful presence stirred. "At last," it sighed. "My revenge is at hand." Up in the mountains, the Ursa continued to grunt and snort as it tried to force its way into the cave after its quarry. Its efforts ceased, however, as it saw something stirring ahead. But this was not its quarry. This was something new, and it was coming towards the monster very fast. A powerful voice rang out, echoing off the mountains. "Begone, foul beast!" The figure roared, moments before something very hard and heavy impacted with the Ursa's head and sent it sprawling, instantly unconscious. Floating triumphantly in the air above the beast was a glorious alicorn, larger in stature than even Princess Celestia, if only by a few inches. His coat was a deep blue, with silver highlights along its sides. His mane flowed like spun gold and crackled with electric power. His flank was covered with a large storm cloud cutie mark, bisected by a single golden lightning bolt. His wings stretched out several feet to either side, and his horn was nearly a foot long itself. To his right forehoof an ornate hammer with an intricately carved stone head was bound tightly with thick twine to allow him to swing it with ease. The majestic alicorn looked down at the beast he'd felled, taking note of the rune inscribed into its forehead. The symbol looked like a stylized snake, twisting into an odd shape almost like the letter S. The sign was extremely familiar to him. If only he could remember. The alicorn's brow furrowed in frustration. What was wrong with him? His memories were all fuzzy. He couldn't remember. He couldn't... Wait. Who was he? Big Mac blinked as his mind resurfaced, taking over from the instinctual personality that had gripped his mind. His neck craned as he looked back at his new body in wide-eyed surprise. He took in his wings, his coat, his mane, his new cutie mark. He raised a hoof to his forehead and felt the long horn now protruding from it. Finally, in his own voice, he spoke the only words that he felt could accurately convey his feelings. What the hey? And that, for the moment, dear listeners, is the first chapter of My Little Avengers by Cooler Kid, available on Google Docs or at the Equestria Daily link that is provided in the chat or in the description below. The time is now 10:43, and I really don't think I've got time enough to read another fanfic unless someone's got a 5,000 word or less thing that they want me to read. If not, however, I am probably going to have to call it a night. So, what do you all think? What should we read next week? Obviously, Chapter 2 of My Little Avenger, but what else have you got? If you've got a story that you'd like to hear read by myself, send it in to DJMAR3 on Skype, or use the Facebook page to send us a message as well. We'll have a look at it. Well, actually we won't. We'll see it, and then we'll read it blindly, as we always do here on FanFiction Fridays. Now, let's have a look-see in the comments. Prime Sonic seems to have come back in the middle of My Little Avengers. Hopefully he's enjoyed the show. Prime Sonic has just asked, are you off to party? I don't know. If by party you mean take up arms against hordes of orcs and stuff in Dungeon Defenders, or whatever it is you do in Sanctum, then probably. That's a party. I have pizza I could cook. You could call that a pizza party. You could do that. Otherwise, no, not really. No, I think that's it for tonight. Yes. Yes, I do believe that's it. For tonight, for FanFiction Fridays, on Oatstralia On Air Live, I've been Golden Microphone. I've been Pegasus. I actually got to say some things. And I didn't say a word. Well, we didn't get to sing either, so, you know, fair's fair. It's not fair. I don't get to say anything. We'll find something for you to talk about later, okay? I'm sure there's a story out there just for you. Actually, yes, there are stories just for you. We'll probably go back to Heart Flank and Sweets just for you next week, okay? I get a bit. Hooray! One more from the comments. Prime Sonic says, and where is this live YouTube link for the show I heard about? Well, it's not live on YouTube. We're not Red Bull. We can't afford that. But pretty much as soon as the show is done, the show gets uploaded to YouTube. So pretty much in an hour or so, you should be able to find a link on the Oatstralia On Air Facebook page going to the show on YouTube. Pretty simple, so about an hour or two later, or even the next day afterwards, most of the shows that you hear on Oatstralia On Air Live go to YouTube, so you can listen in. Now, the thing about that is that, well, unfortunately for us, YouTube doesn't allow for certain shows to go on when we use licensed music. If we use unlicensed music, like anything by a pony artist, for example, then it's fine. But anything else, and well, nothing doing really. It is a bit of a pity though. Now, it seems, yes, it has, yes. Prime Sonic says, cool, you stay awesome then. See you next time. Well, see you later for sure. And we will be seeing all of you much later. For now though, we're going to leave you all with, why is it never where I want it to be? Well, doesn't matter. I'm going to go ahead and put on Join the Herd, a cover by Forest Rain. It's, well, you might know the beat. The song is fantastic, and we'll leave you all with it. Thanks for listening to FanFiction Fridays. We'll see you next time.
What is this weird show? It's like the only thing you know. You talk about it every day. You know this is child's play. Your path ahead is blurred. Told to go join in on the herd. You know this show's for younger crowds. How can you say you're proud? Now think, brony, think. Everything in here is pink. You spent your precious time. Now you're walking a fine line. And then you have the nerve to ask me to observe these girly things. You open your mouth and sing. Ponies aren't just for girls, let the still unfurl. Twilight sparkle, pinkie pie, applejack and fluttershy. Do not be afraid, we will never fade. Rainbow dash and rarity, join the herd and you will see. Hey, this show's not bad, I'll give it to you, I'm real glad. I never thought I'd like this stuff, I thought I was just too tough. I'm sorry I was rude, I feel happy and renewed. And even though I feel naive, I find it hard to leave. So thanks, brony, thanks, my mind was shooting blanks. I feel like such a fool, who knew ponies were this cool. Now wait for Saturday, for the show to play. What will it bring? We open our mouths and sing. Ponies aren't just for girls, let the still unfurl. Twilight sparkle, pinkie pie, applejack and fluttershy. Do not be afraid, we will never fade. Rainbow dash and rarity, join the herd and you will see. So thanks, brony, thanks. Looks like I've joined your ranks. I never could repay what you've done for me today. So thanks, brony, thanks. Looks like I've joined your ranks. I never could repay. Ponies aren't just for girls, let the still unfurl. Twilight sparkle, pinkie pie, applejack and fluttershy. Do not be afraid, we will never fade. Rainbow dash and rarity, join the herd and you will. Ponies aren't just for girls, let the still unfurl. Twilight sparkle, pinkie pie, applejack and fluttershy. Do not be afraid, we will never fade. Rainbow dash and rarity, join the herd and you will see.
Oh, right, and this is the ending part where, well, again, this is radio. What I hear and what the listeners hear happen at two completely different times. So as soon as the listeners for the live show get cut, they don't hear most of what I'm about to say. Nothing at all. Good night, every pony. Nothing at all. Nothing at all. Stupid sexy announcer voice.